Good day, everyone. Welcome to Sgtalkz, the podcast where we discuss Singapore's most pressing issues. I'm Hayden, and I'll be your host for today. With me are Javier, Shikai, Raphael, and Yeheng, and we will be discussing about Singapore's food security. So to kick things off, what do you guys know about the food situation in Singapore?
Guess it's stable for now, but then it could go south in the future. For example, we could be out of food due to the amount of supply, or like we just have too much demand, so we just don't have enough food for everyone. One reason for like supply decrease will probably be like countries just don't want to export food for various reasons such as war or like they're just in too much of a difficult situation to do so. Like and also the fact another supply reason why we could run out of food is because we just don't really have much self-grown food. Given that we are a tiny nation, there are some countries where the smallest states are bigger than our entire landmass. So yeah, we barely have any self-grown food. And then for demand factors, it's pretty obvious. If the population growth goes out of control, which is highly unlikely, I guess the demand of food might be too much for our current food supply to catch up to, but it's quite unlikely given like the current birth rate and stuff like that.
That's true. Anyone else?
So now I think Singapore still has a constant supply of food, but that doesn't mean that Singapore shouldn't be concerned about its food security. Because Singapore's food largely depend on global supply chains, and limited food production only accounts for 10% of food found in supermarkets. So Singapore is very reliant on other countries and not very self-reliant per se. So if things go haywire, it might be the end of Singapore.
Very gloomy there, Javier.
Yes.
Lol. And
Why speed?
Anyone with another outlook?
I mean, like, for me, it's currently fine. It's just that it's not concerning anytime soon. It's just you can slowly start to see the effects, like, Malaysia being evil and all. And then imagine if something like, I don't know, Ukraine or Georgia happens nearby, then you just get no more wheat, no more shipping and stuff like that. Or imagine there is a war here, and if it's a war, you can likely like determine who is gonna be raging war at us. So you're not gonna get any food from anywhere nearby either. So that's gonna be very bad. Even if it's no war, imagine if it's like some global outage or like any maybe a more dangerous pandemic. Maybe wait another 50 years or so. It's like, and especially when you add on like the fact that the population will rise after a few more. Probably won't rise, but wastage increases, and other countries there might be higher food demand, so like it'll be even harder to get food over here. Like the food supply situation will inevitably get worse. So even if it doesn't look too bad right now, but you can already start to see some of the impacts like relying on importation has a
Yeheng, any opinions?
At the moment, you can see that, as everyone has already said, that the food import is mostly from overseas. So we can't really ensure that reliable food imports into the future. So it's not very sustainable for Singapore to continue doing this. That's why like there's a 13 plan, 2030 green plan, right, for to ensure that we can produce our own food in the future. It's a bit like a tiny little goal, but it's a small step that we can make for the future, that we can make our own food, right? Just case in point, just right now there's like Ukraine happening, right? There's a war over there. None of the food from over there is coming shipped over here, so we can see there's prices increasing. There's food shortages. There's like global inflation all around. So yeah.
Speaking of the 30-30 plan, you guys all know what the 30-30 plan is, right?
essentially that by 2030 we're gonna grow 30% of our own food, right?
Yeah. What do you guys think is the most effective way to achieve this 30-30 plan?
let's see. We could probably use something like smart design to allow plants to grow in other places that normally won't grow in, because normally people associate farming with places like a large field with a lot of sun and a good amount of rain. And there are like many places that are just deemed so-called unsuitable, such as places indoors. But then with smart enough design, I guess it's possible to grow plants directly in places such as restaurants or supermarkets using relevant pieces of technology. An example I can use is that when yesterday I was watching Channel News Asia, and then I saw this how do I call it? What do I call those things? A program where which was focusing on like growing food sustainably and like growing our own food. There's this restaurant or like F&B outlet, I guess, called Bang Who Cooks. They made a form of like, this area inside the restaurant. I don't really know how to describe it. It's like this structure with soil in it, and it also has its own self-watering system, and then it's used to grow crops which can be used directly for like it can be used directly for culinary purposes. And because the chef himself can't really like tend to the plants too well, so the self-watering system would prove to be useful. And not only that, there are lights over there that can help allow the plants to photosynthesize, and then they have different durations for different kinds of plants which live in different conditions. So using tech like this, I guess, can help with
I
like
see.
the 30-30 plan.
Tech, very interesting. Anyone else?
I also think the most effective way is using technology. I think Singapore can invest in R&D to look for new agriculture technology, such as using indoor multi-story LED lighting and recirculating aquaculture systems, as this method can produce 10 to 15 times more than traditional farms. And also, not to mention, Singapore has a limited amount of land and you can't just grow crops on a large scale, so you need to resort to such methods. Yeah.
I guess tech solves the space and perhaps manpower issues, but what about cost?
Singapore government has money.
Like the way I look at it, right? Okay, technology might help, but on a base level, if you think about it, right? If you take it to like a severe extent, mass collectivization, these kind of old techniques also can work. So the main problem shouldn't really be like, I don't know, technology. Technology is just like I don't know, like an extra edge or like to outcompete other people. But the main thing is that like the government and the people in the first place still have to be like willing to make sacrifices, or be like at least like be willing to move these plans, like move towards this goal instead of just talking. So like I was watching this like Channel 5 thing yesterday. They were talking about it's like some it's not related lah, but it's just like this university thing. They're campaigning for like less stress. Then the minister just kept talking. We will try not to make this just a slogan. We will try to put in effort. So this is the same thing that can be applied here lah. You don't just talk, oh, okay, I want to reach 30%. You have to actually like waste some of your budget, allocate it somewhere else. Tell kids that don't just go be like what doctor, lawyers, whatever they want to be. Conscript them or like at least encourage them to join these kind of like agricultural things. So like the politicians cannot just like 讲啥 whatever like, they cannot just like just make it sound nice for like for the average population. They also have to be like willing to take a step out of line. If like imagine like okay, so 30% by 2030. What suddenly like I don't know, a certain country nearby does some weird things? You have to be willing to like take more extreme measures or maybe go above 30%. So what if like we suddenly cannot grow enough because some certain countries cut off something? You have to find your own measures. Up to you how severe you want to take them to. And lastly, it's also like, yeah, so don't just talk about it. Maybe add more investments, be willing to go further than that. Just it has to be materialistic. Can't just be like some promise that you just throw and hope will happen by like, I don't know, a decade more.
A very intriguing take, Shikai. That's true. Cannot be no action, talk only later, you know.
Yeah.
Moving on to the next question. What do you think our food demand will be like in 2030?
Kind of hard to say because as I said, the supply, we can't really predict the future accurately, and then and I mean, if beyond 2020 it would be like 2031 and onwards, so there'll probably be like 9 years and more than 9 years into the future, which is really, for a mere student like me, it's kind of hard to predict the future. But then as I said earlier, there will be like a few things that can probably affect this, such as the supply.
You're a geography student.
What? Okay, yes, I'm a geography student, but they don't cover this in the school syllabus. Or at least I don't memorize the graphs because I'm not that try hard. Anyway. So yeah, supply and demand. No one, in terms of supply, I've already listed the factors before, namely like conditions of other countries, or like basically just conditions of other countries. And wait, no, hold on. They're talking about demand. Crap, I went off the topic. Anyway, so focusing mainly on demand.
It's fine. You can talk about other things as long as they're related.
What? Oh
You
yeah.
can talk about you can talk about other things.
Talk about other things. Okay, so repeating what I said about supply, I guess different conditions in the future are kind of hard to predict. Like example, like adverse weather conditions in other countries that will probably give us a food. And our current conditions in Singapore as well. It's in like, because we might be able to grow like the 30%, by then. And if Singapore happens to have like some weird condition that disrupts this 30%, right, our food supply might be quite impacted. Condition will probably be like disease or war. Very classic. Anyway, for the actual demand, it might increase if it depends on the birth rate and the amount of foreigners that come in. The birth rate, I've already said before, more children, more mouths to feed, more food required. But looking at the current birth rate of Singapore, I think that's highly unlikely to increase because of that. But then another unseen thing that I feel that might affect this is the the number of foreigners that will come in here for various purposes, such as like leisure, business, and mainly those like migrant workers who come here and stay long term so that they can earn themselves some money. Those people will definitely consume the food here, and it will definitely increase our food demand if they come in swarms. But I believe that it should, according to my gut feel, I don't think it should increase by then, but like that drastically. But yeah, the food demand is also highly dependent on them, but it's really hard to say whether it will increase or decrease by then. So yeah, that's my take on it.
Okay.
Well,
I think that Singapore population is more or less stagnating. So food demand should probably remain largely the same. Unless, more people die than they are born, then it will decrease.
So like how for the past few years the population increase has been like slowly decreasing, right? So that our population is kind of like plateauing and going to be like constant. But even though our population might not increase, like the the affluence of like the population like might be increasing. So people are more wealthy and will definitely like spend more money on like just useless things like buy more food and ending up wasting out more food, which like means that there would be an increase in the food consumption in the total country despite the population being constant. And the past years, the food waste has been increasing, and maybe it's a bit plateauing, like in the last year, maybe, but it's still doesn't seem like it's going to improve that much. So it might be a problem in the future.
So like talking about predictability, and all these migrant things or everything like that. So those we can't really calculate. I mean, largely we can't calculate, but some things will remain constant. Like other countries, their population, even though it's plateauing, their demand for food is also rising because like what Yaheng, some other people said, people are getting more affluent, getting more rich, getting more bourgeoisie, all of that. So they'll consume more. So when they consume more, it means that their domestic consumption is much higher. That means you can import less food. So like all these things are quite predictable, and that's why they have to like start planning all these kind of 30-30 and all these kind of things. So like our food demand in 2030 is also likely to increase at the same time because our domestic consumption also likely to increase. And plateauing doesn't mean, I don't think you have a negative birth to death ratio yet, right? So yeah, so overall just gonna get like more and more dire. Then with more and more dire situations, maybe we take more and more dire actions.
I think just now Chikai brought up an interesting point about needing sacrifice. So what do you guys think we'll have to sacrifice as a nation and as a people, like both on the larger scale and in terms of our personal lives?
Time will definitely have to be sacrificed. I mean, nothing in this world can be done without time. So I guess we got to take out our own time and then or maybe even we can take out time from like various things from our personal lives to our very passion just to work in the agricultural sector to increase the amount of food production. And then some people might even go to the point where they'll like volunteer their services. They won't even ask for remuneration. I can't pronounce. They'll just give the labor without any money in return. These are the people. So yeah, those are the kinds of sacrifices we're gonna have to make if we want to like achieve our food security.
That's manpower sacrifice, right? Like time and manpower. Yeah, but what about space or like money?
I can list the stuff that. All right, so in terms of money, this list might not be as exhaustive as it looks like or sounds like. So we'll need money for land, workers, or machinery, fertilizers, crops, water, pesticides for non-organic farms, and transportation of crops. And finally, for electricity, if stuff like lighting is used, I don't even know whether lighting is considered part of machinery or not. So yeah, that's in terms of money. Then in terms of space, I believe all you really need is space for growing crops. By space for growing crops, there's a space allocated for the crops themselves, and then there'll probably be like enough space for various other processes to happen, such as processing those crops and I guess transportation, and then you'll definitely need some space for vehicles, I guess. And yeah, that's essentially all the sacrifices I can think of.
Anyone else?
I think money will be needed for R&D because Singapore has very little space. And to produce like enough food to sustain like 5 million people, we will need like new technology to use less space, as little space as possible to increase the volume of crops. And also to an individual level, I think everyone can, only consume what they need so that they put less stress on the food situation in Singapore.
The way I think of it, right, because like you say, it's not only sacrifice for 30-30, just sacrifice for food security in general. Eventually, you have to sacrifice some generations, like generations of people. Not in the direct sense that you have to like do hostile things. Like generations of people might have to shift their focus from their desired occupations to towards like this more agricultural thing. Because if you think about it, we can sacrifice money because we should have that for a while. Land we can't really sacrifice unless we grow like overseas or these kind of other things. So what you have left is to like maybe sacrifice manpower, sacrifice time and like passion, I guess. I mean, if you think about it, you honestly rather sacrifice all these kind of things in like a very beneficial, not so costly way. Like you're just sacrificing people's ambition, sacrificing their what a generation has like larger aspects to. But you honestly rather sacrifice this than like sacrifice your entire nation starving to death during some wars. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah.
So what I think is that like it's not whether or not we have the resources. Like we definitely have it. Singapore has like quite a lot of money in like reserve, that is, and we have just a significant amount of manpower is enough. The problem is that like when allocating people and money and space to like agriculture, like what do we have to take it away from? Like just like as like Raphael and like Shikai mentioned, right? The problem in manpower is that we have to take people away from what they want to do or what they're already doing to work on like agriculture, like planting, taking care of the plants and like research and development, right? So the problem with that, like that's similar with like money. We have to in the Singapore budget, instead of allocating the funds to some like other thing like transport or healthcare, we have to take the money and put it into the agriculture industry. As for space, so I think that there's quite a lot of space over the ocean. So maybe like planting plants on the ocean, it's like pontoons or like some like floating farms are like quite efficient. Maybe.
There's also space across a certain ocean. So yeah.
Okay,
grow.
Chica.
No, I wasn't meaning that like you can grow overseas. Yeah.
I
But if
see.
it's growing overseas, technically it becomes an export, no?
Government can increase space
Get
for people
local
working this.
companies to grow overseas.
Wait, one at a time. Chica, what were you saying?
Rafael just said like if you grow overseas, doesn't it become exports? But if you grow overseas with local companies and you prioritize domestic consumption for these foreign companies, then it doesn't really become a import. It's just like you're taking more land because you don't have it at home.
Oh, actually, speaking of companies, do you think fulfilling our agricultural demand should fall to private sectors, or does the government have to,
This is
play a
Singapore,
part?
right? Everything is like 40 to 50% nationalized minimally, like major sectors. So the government definitely has to step in because not evil businessmen will not get things done in 10 years.
Next question. How can the community play a part? Like, not government organized or a big company, just yourself. Anyone?
Community contribution.
Yeah, you go
They
first.
can either what? Okay.
Yeah, you go first. You go first.
Oh God, why does it keep scrolling down? So I guess the community can donate if they really have that much money. I mean, they've already paid taxes. So if this thing is like government funded, but then they can still donate more, then it will further increase the amount of money available to spend on agriculture. At the same time, they can, as I said earlier, they can, I guess, volunteer. They can like give up their hopes, dreams, time, and money, so that there less money is needed to hire farmers at the respective farms, I guess. And oh yeah, aren't we going to like volunteer at that composting or something?
Yeah.
Yeah, I
Have
guess
you
so.
guys heard of like community gardens?
Yeah, seen them, heard of them.
Okay.
But a lot of them got taken down, right?
Oh no.
Because like
Why?
it's neighborhood space or something. You're not allowed to grow stuff.
I mean, they're not very effective either. You just grow like one chili that takes like 1 year to grow.
Can you
So
share it
just
among your
like take the
neighbors?
land and make it grow like some, I don't know, hydroponic farm or like just,
Yeah.
I don't know, scrap it or something.
But then I guess the biggest piece of land that's closest to like most people's houses is parks, right? Do you think we should convert parks into gardens, or are parks necessary?
Some of them have
They can be
gardens
both at the
inside.
same time.
Both.
You can admire the flowers of agricultural plants instead of regular ornamental plants, I guess.
Yeah, I guess you could.
So for what the community can do, right? Like, I mean, honestly, if you're not working directly in the sector, you're just a bystander. And what a bystander can do is just, I don't know, moral support, like just support local producer. Like maybe just
Buy it,
like,
eat
I don't
it.
know, if it's more expensive, you must be like nationalistic for this cabbage. Like you can't just like go buy like some Australian one. You must buy it grown in Singapore. And
I think all our
then,
cabbages
like-
are Chinese.
I mean, we can just become part of China. They have enough food over there.
Okay.
And like as a bystander consumer, you can just like waste less food. So like I don't know, you have more at home, you won't like just keep buying and then like a larger portion of it goes to waste. So like the food cycle is lasts longer. Yeah. Then as like young people, you have to be like more open to these kind of things. Like I honestly like personally I don't know whether I'll be like open to these kind of like agricultural things, but I don't know, for the next generation they have to be more willing. Easy to say, but I don't
So to sum everything up, beyond 2030, how do you see Singapore's future? Will the 30-30 plan succeed and we will continue localizing food production, or will it just fail because Singapore is incompetent or something? Anyone?
I mean, it's like in terms of failing, it's quite hard to fail. Like this is a government thing. If they do badly, then every 5 years there's a certain that will decide whether they still continue to be the government. I mean, like around 10% of what is grown is already local, right? So just another 20% will be too hard. Then beyond 2030, like I mean, if you already have it will definitely cost more sacrifice. Like if you're trying to grow like beyond 30%, because in like all aspects are kind of limited besides money, maybe technology. So like it'll be like, I don't know, you're just like going deeper and deeper into some territory, so it will become more costly. But at the same time, if you have the foundations like laid down already, it'll be like much easier to achieve any like greater amounts of food security and local production.
Anyone else?
I think the country's planning, I think Singapore should be fine with the 30 by 30 plan. However, with the 30 by 30 plan, 70% of food is still imported back to Singapore. So it's still somewhat reliant on other countries. So Singapore has to still maintain friendly ties with other countries so that they'll be willing to export to us. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think if that we are able to meet the 30 by 30 plan, right, that it should be easy for us to like quickly develop and get a larger percentage of our total produce, right? Because as long as we get the ball rolling and we have like infrastructure set up, research is done, then we are able to like more quickly develop and get like a larger percentage of the total food that's like produced in Singapore, right, for like the population.
Okay. I think I'll ask one last question. Oh, yes, were you going to say something?
What? I don't know.
Were you going to say
You
something?
ask.
Okay. Do you guys think growing food locally will improve Singapore's food security? Because growing food locally still does mean that even locally grown food supply is prone to disaster and diseases or other incidents, or we could be involved in a war ourselves. So how does localizing food supply improve our food security?
Well, I think that local food should definitely be more stable than like food from like foreign countries, because the climate in Singapore is more temperate, right? It's a constant pretty much year throughout except for maybe the rainy season. And also just because of like space limitations, most of our plants will be grown in like vertical farms or greenhouses or something, which are like enclosed environments. So it's a lot easier to like maintain the conditions for the plants to grow in.
I mean, like, if you say growing domestically is not so reliable because diseases and everything, you have to remember, like, for most of the world, they grow their food domestically. So even if it's hard for us to reach it, it's kind of, I don't know, tried and proven that growing domestically is much more reliable than growing foreign. Because, like, I mean, if you have a disease, at least you can see it unfolding already. Then you can just like prep all the necessary requirements, kill all those chickens and everything, I guess, so the bird flu doesn't get out. And yeah, it's like growing domestically is much more like predictable in the sense that you're not open to as many variables of threat and unpredictable stuff. And if like a war happens, like of course it'll be better to grow at home. As you say, even if war happens, it's like not very good. At least the food still gets to like, I don't know, your HDB or something like that. If it's from like, I don't, let's say China, you have to go through the entire ocean and then just get sunk by something and then you don't get any food either. So yeah, domestically it's much more reliable.
I think the whole point of producing food locally is so that we can be more self-reliant and less dependent on other countries. Because recently the Malaysian chicken ban thing, we have like no fresh chicken. So if we can produce our food locally, then we probably won't have this kind of problems where other countries want to export food to us and we got like nothing to eat.
Yeah, we can protect our own interests first. Anyone has
like
anything to add on?
Yes. In all cases, it's always better to be less reliant. Like, let me go off point. Like China has this 双循环thing, is also just to become more reliant during COVID. They just cut off a lot of trade from foreign companies. So yeah, it's always better to just rely on yourself, because if you import too much, you kind of become very angsty about a lot of small influences like American kids. So yeah.
Okay. Anything else?
No.
No. And then I think we'll end the podcast here. Bye, guys.
Bye.